You weren't invited to speak, Mom. Just sit down, please. Her eyes didn't meet mine. Not once. I stood there, clutching my note cards, my palms sweating through the paper. And right then, in front of 132 guests, I became invisible. If this story touches you even a little, please like, share, and subscribe. It means more than you know. And tell me, what time is it in your city right now? I'm 62 years old. I have 2 hands that once braided her hair every morning before school, a back that bent to clean floors, in 3 houses, and a heart that once believed love was enough. My name is Helen. I was a single mother for most of my life. My ex-husband left when our daughter Clara was 5, said he couldn't breathe in this kind of life. I never remarried. I never even tried, because I only had space for one love, her. Clara was everything. My mornings were her breakfasts, my nights were her homework, and my dreams were always about making sure she never felt the absence that I did, of a mother who was never warm, and a husband who walked away. I worked in quiet jobs, cleaning, laundry, kitchen prep. People never saw me, but Clara did. At least, I thought she did. Until that day, the wedding, when I realized I had become the coat rack she hung her childhood on and then forgot. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before the sun. I had barely slept. My hands ached from pressing Clara's veil the night before, smoothing it with steam like I used to press her school uniform when she was little. I wanted everything perfect. I didn't know if anyone would notice, but I still believed she would. I packed a small emergency bag, extra safety pins, breath mints, tissues, a miniature sewing kit. Things a mother thinks of when she's still allowed to be one. The venue was a vineyard, 2 hours outside the city. I'd never been anywhere like it. Stone archways, roses in bloom, a shallow pond with koi fish that shimmered when the sun broke through the clouds. Clara had chosen lavender and silver as the theme. Her bridesmaids wore pale violet dresses that floated like petals. I wore a soft gray gown, something elegant but quiet. I didn't want to draw attention, only to belong. When I arrived, the air buzzed with photographers and laughter. People hugging, music playing, champagne already flowing. I stood near the back, holding my clutch tight. Clara passed by in a flurry of silk and perfume, trailed by 2 women I didn't know. "Clara," I said gently. She turned, smiled, but it was rushed, distracted. "Oh, Mom, you made it. Great. Everything okay?" "Yes," I said. "Of course. You look—" She was already turning away. That was the first crack. I told myself not to take it personally. Brides are busy, overwhelmed. It's not about me. Not today. I helped straighten a centerpiece, picked up a fallen napkin. I smiled at strangers who didn't smile back. I waited for someone to tell me what to do, where to sit, when the family photos would be taken. No one did. The ceremony started an hour. Later, I sat in the second row, behind the groom's parents. I assumed I'd be next to them, but there was no name card for me. So I sat alone. Clara walked down the aisle like a dream. The music swelled and people whispered, "She's so stunning." And she was. But my chest felt heavy, not proud. Waited for her eyes to meet mine. Just once. And when they didn't, I told myself it wasn't on purpose. The vows were beautiful. He cried. She laughed. I smiled the way you smile when your cheeks are made of stone. When they kissed, everyone stood. I clapped with trembling hands. After the ceremony, people were ushered to the reception hall. White candles flickered in glass, jars, and the scent of rosemary and warm bread floated through the air. I found my seat at table 12. Near the back, the mother of the bride. Table 12. I watched as the best man gave a toast that made everyone roar with laughter. The maid of honor cried through hers. The groom's father told a long, sentimental story that had people wiping their eyes. And I waited for my name to be called, for someone to say, "And now the bride's mother will say a few words." I had rehearsed it 3 times that morning. Not too long. Just enough. A little memory about Clara's stubbornness when she was 5. A line about how proud I was. And a quote from a poem she once loved. Something about roots and wings. But they moved on. To dessert. To dancing. She never asked me to speak. I folded my note cards slowly, like folding away something sacred. Still, I tried. I rose from my seat. I walked to her table. Her husband was feeding her a piece of cake and she laughed, frosting on her lip. I touched her shoulder. She looked up and for a moment, just one moment, I saw a flicker of discomfort. Like she remembered something she had forgotten she was supposed to feel. "Did you want something?" she asked softly. I had something prepared. A little speech. "Oh," she said. Her smile was gone now. "I don't think there's time left in the schedule. Maybe another day?" Her voice was polite, detached, like a waitress explaining the soup was sold out. I nodded. Inside, something began to break. I kept the note cards in my lap during dinner, beneath the white linen napkin, like they were shameful. Each card was small, handwritten in my best cursive, the kind I used when Clara was in 3rd grade, and asked me to write in her diary because she liked how loopy my letters were. I had chosen my words carefully, not too sentimental, not too long, just honest. When Clara was 7, she came home crying because another girl said her lunch smelled weird. She asked me why we couldn't just eat what the other kids ate. I told her, "Because our food is seasoned with memories. One day you'll understand." I never got to say that. Never got to remind her how we used to sit on the kitchen floor at midnight, eating leftovers and laughing about nothing. How she once whispered, "You're my favorite person in the world." Instead, I sat at table 12, listening to someone else's mother get thanked, loudly, lovingly, with a round of applause. Clara didn't say my name, not in her vows, not in her toast, not in the tribute montage they played on a screen, filled with photos of her father, her cousins, her college, friends. I was in 2, one of me holding her as a baby, the other at her graduation. Blink and you'd miss them. I watched that screen and felt like I was watching someone else's life, someone else's daughter, someone else's story. My hands trembled, and I pressed them to my lap. I didn't cry. I never do. Not in public. My mother taught me that. A woman's tears should be locked in the same drawer as her secrets. Still, I remembered the speech. Every word. "Clara, you were born on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The power had gone out in the hospital, and I remember holding you by candlelight. You had the loudest scream I've ever heard, and I laughed because I knew, even then, you'd never let the world ignore you." I wanted to say that. I wanted the room to hear it. I wanted her to hear it. But she didn't. And I didn't. Because somewhere along the way, I became the footnote to her headline, the background blur in her carefully curated life. When the DJ called for the mother-daughter dance, I held my breath. But they skipped it. Instead, she danced with her stepmother, the groom's mother, actually. But Clara had taken to calling her that during the engagement. They laughed through the song. I watched from my seat, swaying gently with the music I couldn't feel. In the pocket of my dress, my fingers touched the corner of one card, The ink had smudged from my palms. You used to climb into my bed during storms, even when you were 12. You said my breathing helped you sleep. You said I was your safe place. I wondered in that moment if she remembered that, or if she'd replaced those memories with newer, shinier ones. Ones that didn't include the smell of bleach on, my work clothes, or the way I fell asleep sitting up after double shifts. I finished my meal slowly. No one came to check on me. No one asked why I was so quiet. And maybe that was the worst part, not being excluded but being forgotten so effortlessly, like I had been erased so thoroughly that even grief didn't make a sound. When the music turned loud again and people began to dance, I quietly stood. I left my untouched glass of champagne, folded my napkin, and walked out onto the lawn. Tadam Force, moon was high, and the vineyard looked silver in the dark. I held the speech in my hand for a long time. Then I let it go. The cards floated down onto the grass, caught by a breeze, landing soft and scattered like fallen petals. And for the first time that day, I let myself cry. Not loud, not messy. Just 2 tears. That was all I could afford. I could have stayed. I could have waited until the cake was cut, until the sparklers came out, until people began to leave, and someone finally remembered to say goodbye. But something inside me had already stood up long before my body did. It happened during the group photo, the one they called Close Family Only. I was standing nearby when the photographer asked for parents of the bride and groom. Clara turned toward her father, who'd shown up for the event, tan and smiling like he hadn't missed 15 years, and looped her arm through his without hesitation. Then she looked at me, not directly, past me, and then turned away. No gesture. No, come join us. No space made for me. I watched as they all gathered under the white arch, the vines curling romantically above their heads. Flash after flash lit their faces, each one a moment I would never be in. A woman with a clipboard tapped my arm. "Could you step aside just a little?" She whispered. I did. I stepped back, and back, and back, until I was standing behind a row of rose bushes, completely out of frame. That was the moment. Not loud, not cruel, just definitive. I looked down at my dress, wrinkled at the waist. My shoes, new and still pinching. My hands, stained faintly with the red of a wine glass I hadn't finished. No one noticed when I walked toward the parking lot. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't make a scene. I didn't tell Clara I was leaving. There's a kind of pain that prefers silence. Not because it's easier, but because even your voice feels unwanted. The driver looked surprised when I returned early. He asked if I was okay. I nodded. We drove in silence for a while, the headlights painting long shadows over the country road. Then, softly, I asked him to stop the car near the old oak tree just beyond the vineyard gate. He hesitated. "Here." Yes, I stepped out, walked to the base of the tree, and reached into my clutch. From it, I took a small locket. Inside was a photo of Clara, 4 years old in overalls, chocolate on her face, laughing. I had brought it to give her, as a keepsake, as something old, something borrowed, something blue. Though no one had asked for my offering. I opened it, stared at the little girl who used to grab my face with both hands and say, "You're the best part of my whole life." Then I gently placed the locket at the base of the tree, under a stone. If she ever came back here, maybe she'd find it. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, it was no longer mine to carry. Back in the car, I watched the lights of the vineyard disappear behind us, twinkling like stars that didn't belong to my sky anymore. No one called that night. Not Clara. Not her father. Not anyone. And that silence was an answer all its own. A week passed, 7 mornings of waking before the sun, only to sit in a house too quiet, sipping tea that tasted like memory. I didn't check my phone much. I wasn't waiting. Not really. I did notice the messages, though, from my sister, from my neighbor, from my co-worker at the library. But not from Clara. Not even a text. I told myself she was busy, that maybe she hadn't noticed I left early, that maybe someone else would mention it to her, and she'd reach out, but the silence grew roots. Every hour it didn't ring made the air in my lungs a little heavier. Then, on the 8th morning, it did. The ringtone startled me. I almost didn't answer, but I saw the name. Daniel's mother. Daniel. Clara's husband. I paused, thumb hovering over the screen, then pressed accept. Hello, I said, my voice smaller than I meant. Oh, thank God you picked up, she said. Helen. I know this is odd, but I didn't know who else to call. I sat down. What's wrong? There was a pause, a long one, and then, I think something's going on with Clara. She hasn't left the house in 3 days. She won't talk to me. She won't talk to Daniel, I swallowed. Has something happened? Another silence. Honestly, I think she's unraveling. The words didn't compute at first, not after what I had seen. Clara glowing, laughing, so sure of her new life. She was fine, I whispered. I thought so too, Daniel's mother said. But yesterday she locked herself in their bedroom and just sobbed for hours. Daniel said she keeps saying, I messed it all up. I ruined everything. I closed my eyes. Did something happen? I asked again, though I already felt the answer forming like smoke. She mentioned you, she said gently. Said she forgot something important. Someone. That she hurt you. That she saw you walking away and didn't stop you. I held the phone tighter. She saw me? I guess so. I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't respond, because I didn't know either. Because part of me, the scarred part, the mother part, wanted to rush to her, to hold her hair, like I did when she was sick at 5, to say, it's okay, you didn't mean it, I forgive you. But the other part, the forgotten woman at table 12, sat still. She's asking for you, Daniel's mother said. Would you consider just speaking with her? I closed my eyes and felt the ache behind them swell. I'll think about it, I said, and I meant it. But I didn't promise, because what no one tells you about being hurt by the person you love most is that forgiveness is not always the next breath. Sometimes the wound needs to echo a while, to make sure your voice hasn't been buried inside it. That night I listened to the silence between us again. But this time, it had changed. It wasn't emptiness anymore. It was waiting. It's strange, the things we inherit without meaning to. My mother wasn't cruel. She was just absent. She lived in the same house as me but occupied it like a guest. Never quite touching the floor. Never fully letting her voice fill the rooms. She cooked. She cleaned. She never yelled. But she never praised either. I don't remember her hugging me. I don't remember her saying, I'm proud of you. Mostly, I remember silence and the sound of her footsteps fading down the hall whenever I needed her most. When Clara was born, I made a vow in the hospital bed while the IV still hung from my arm. I whispered it to her tiny ear. You will never feel invisible in this world, not while I am in it. And for 28 years, I kept that promise. I went to every school play, even when I had to leave work early, and lie to my supervisor. I packed handwritten notes in her lunch bag until she asked me to stop in 9th grade. I sat through 4 years of volleyball games, even though she mostly sat on the bench. I was present. Loudly present. I wanted to be everything my mother hadn't been. But maybe I swung too far, in the other direction. Maybe my love came so wrapped in sacrifice that it felt like a burden she didn't ask for. Maybe, just maybe, Clara didn't mean to hurt me. She just wanted to breathe her own air, without my memories clinging to every inhale. I wonder now if that's how my mother felt too. She once said after a particularly sharp exchange when I was 16, "You'll understand one day." I had rolled my eyes. But now, sitting here with the phone silent again, and my daughter sobbing behind closed doors somewhere across town, I hear those words like a bell, ringing across decades. You'll understand one day. Understanding doesn't always come with comfort. Sometimes it's just a mirror. And when I looked into mine that night, I saw both of us, my mother, myself, and Clara, 3 women standing at the edge of the same wound, each of us either too silent or not heard at all. It came as a voice message, 3 weeks after the wedding. I hadn't heard from her since the call from Daniel's mother. I had almost settled into the stillness. Not peace, but the kind of numb where pain softens around the edges. I was sorting through old books when my phone buzzed. I glanced down. Clara, not a call, not a text. A voice recording. 62 seconds. My hands trembled before I hit play. Hi, Mom. I don't know if you'll ever listen to this or if you'll want to, but I need to say this. Her voice cracked in the first 3 words. I saw you leaving. I didn't stop you. I wanted to, I swear I did. But there were people everywhere and I didn't know what to say and it all just moved so fast. I sat down. The floor creaked beneath me. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just overwhelmed. Everyone kept saying, the day is about the bride. And I think I started believing it. Like I was the sun, and everything else just orbited. And I didn't think... There was a pause. I could hear her breathing. I forgot what it cost you. All those years. All those lunches you skipped so I could eat. All those birthdays you made magical even when we had nothing. And I didn't say thank you. Not once. Not properly. My chest tightened. My fingers curled around the edge of the armchair. When I saw the note cards in your hand, I knew you had a speech. I knew it. And I looked away. The pain in her voice was raw, unscripted. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix it. I don't even know if I deserve to. But I miss you. Please. Please just tell me if there's a way back. The message ended. I listened to it 3 times. Then I sat in the silence. It wasn't that I didn't want to forgive her. It was that the wound had been walked on. Dressed in white heels, on a lavender aisle, in front of everyone. She hadn't just forgotten me. She had rewritten the story of her life and left my chapter out, and yet... Her voice still sounded like 5-year-old Clara, the one who clutched my neck when it thundered, the one who asked if I could live forever. Just so I don't get lost, I pressed the phone to my chest. I didn't respond. Not that day. Not yet. Because something in me had changed. Not love. Never that. But the shape of what I could allow myself to carry. The seasons changed slowly, while I did almost nothing at all. I didn't reply to Clara's message. Not because I wanted to punish her. I had no taste for revenge. But because I didn't know what I'd say, not without dissolving into a version of myself I had worked so hard to outgrow. Instead, I started walking. Each morning, I'd take a different route through the neighborhood, past the bakery that opened at 5 a.m., past the park with the swings that creaked in the wind. I walked like a woman chasing her own shadow, always just one pace behind something she couldn't name. And that's how I met Ava. She was 6, hair like honey, always tangled. She lived 3 doors down with her father, a kind man who worked nights and often fell asleep on the porch, with his shoes still on. Ava was always outside, drawing chalk pictures on the sidewalk, talking to trees. One day she saw me walk by and said, "You walk like your heart is heavy." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She shrugged. "My teacher says that when people don't look up, they're sad inside." And just like that, I smiled. For the first time in weeks, we began to talk, Ava and I, little by little. She told me about her imaginary friends, about how her mom left when she was a baby, about her dream of becoming a professional star counter. One day I brought her a small notebook to keep track of all the stars you count. Her face lit up like sunrise. She started waiting for me every morning. Some days I brought her muffins. Other days she brought me drawings, crooked houses, and stick figures, all labeled you and me. I never asked her to replace Clara. That would be cruel. And I never treated her like a daughter. But I gave her something soft to lean into, and she gave me something I didn't know I still had the capacity to feel: purpose. Her father thanked me once, said he hadn't heard Ava laugh like that in months. I told him she was the one helping me, and it was true. The ache in my chest hadn't disappeared, but it had rearranged itself, become something I could live beside. I went home one evening and cleaned out the wedding folder on my desk, the RSVP list, the hair appointment reminder, the folded speech cards, smudged, torn at the edges. I held them in my hands one last time. Then gently, I lit a match. The flame was small, controlled. It didn't roar. It flickered, then softened into ash. As I watched it burn, I whispered, aloud, "I still love you, but I no longer owe you the pieces you refuse to hold." And with that, I began to rebuild, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with quiet, resolute grace. There's a moment just before dawn when the world forgets its noise. No cars, no voices, just the breath of the earth. And in that breath I've found a kind of peace, not the kind they write poems about, not the triumphant kind, but the peace that comes from survival, the quiet clarity of someone who has carried her grief to the edge of a cliff and decided not to jump. I still think of Clara, not every day, but enough. Sometimes it's a scent, rosemary and lemon, the kind she loved in candles. Sometimes it's a sound, laughter that's too sharp, too familiar, echoing from a restaurant window. I haven't blocked her number. I haven't written back either. Some things remain suspended, not out of cruelty, but because the wound is still learning to close. In one of Ava's drawings, she made us superheroes. I had a cape, red and crooked. She had wings made of books. You save people with your quiet, she said. I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. All my life I thought love meant noise, meant sacrifice loud enough to echo. But now I know better. Sometimes love is in absence, in what you no longer chase, in the silence you no longer fill. I see women like me sometimes, older, holding phones they don't know how to dial, hearts swollen with things they'll never say. To them, I say this. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to grieve the living. You are allowed to stop showing up for people who only remember you when it's convenient. Love does not require erasure, and dignity does not require applause. I still have the voicemail from Clara. I haven't deleted it. Maybe one day I'll listen again. Maybe one day I'll respond. Maybe one day we'll sit across from each other. Two women, older now, softer, and speak not of blame, but of bridges. But today is not that day. Today I braid Ava's hair. Today I plant rosemary in the garden. Today I write letters to myself. Ones that begin with, I see you, and end with, you didn't deserve that. And tonight, when the world goes still again, I'll breathe into the hush and know I was not less because I was forgotten, was not erased. I simply stepped out of a frame that no longer held the truth of who I am.